Now, in just a year, the rate of youth unemployment in Ghana has shot up to 25% from previous 19.5%. That according to the latest Ghana Statistical Service data, which reveals that a sizable number of this group is neither in school nor in any training or unemployment. In all, over 1.7 million Ghanaians are unemployed, with some unable to find jobs, unable to find food to eat, and are multidimensionally poor. 2 out of every 3 females in Ghana are unemployed. That's the findings of the annual Household Income and Expenditure Survey released by the Ghana Statistical Service covering 2022. The government statistician is hopeful that these findings will aid policymakers make informed decisions to address the problem.
So although we are talking about 11 million of our population that at any point in time they are employed, those who are working by themselves, own account workers, and those who are contributing family workers, largely they do not have any forms of contract binding what they do. It's about 2/3 of that. Then we find female dominating among those who are vulnerably employed with a percentage point difference of about 21%. So this is the headline figure that we've always worked with when we come to unemployment, whether it's 13.4, 13.7, 13.9. And as I indicated, we are always concerned about this figure. We didn't deviate from what we know from the census in terms of what our unemployment rate is. During the 2021 population and housing census, we got an unemployment rate of 13.4. And throughout the 3 quarters that we followed the same households, we still have figures in the region of 13.4 and 13.9, depicting the unemployment rate that we have in Ghana. Consistent with our censuses and our surveys, we've seen this as predominantly an urban phenomenon. Honorable Deputy Minister, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, let's slow down the conversation on that. And now let's begin to think about what is happening to whether somebody is employed or somebody is not employed. The benefit that you get from following the same people. So we took our third quarter data and looked at those who were unemployed and went back to the first quarter and looked at what they were doing in the first quarter, and find out whether the characteristics of what they were doing in the first quarter made them susceptible to unemployment in the third quarter. And what we saw is that in the first quarter of 2022, those who were unemployed in the third quarter, about 2/3 of them were in vulnerable employment. And this goes back to emphasize the point that it's the characteristics of what they do that is what we need to pay emphasis on rather than the rate. So those who were unemployed in the third quarter, go back to the first quarter, find out what they are doing, and what they were doing in the first quarter were activities that we characterize as vulnerable employment. Specifically, those who are in non-agri self-employed without employees, about 1/3 of it. Agricultural contributing worker, about 17% of that. That alone is taking about 50% of those who were employed in the first quarter but were doing vulnerable work. For that reason, in the third quarter, they became unemployed.
Now, Isaac Kofi of our research desk has been poring over the data and joins me in studio to break it down for us. Kofi, what more does the survey really say?
So first, let's look at the outlook of Ghana's labor force. So currently, the labor force is around 12.76 million people. When we did the population and housing census, it was around 11.55 million people. So it means labor force has actually increased by more than 10%. Those who are currently employed of the labor force, around 11 million people, unemployed rate is almost 2 million people that we're talking about. So it means those who are 15 years and above. Now, because the discussion is focused on youth unemployment, let's look at how that is also looking. So the national average, which is the overall unemployment rate, is 13.4%. But if you compare this to youth unemployment, if you include those who are not in any form of education and are not in any form of training, then we can find 25% of these youth. So if you compare this, you could see the difference. But youth unemployment, according to the 2021 population and housing census, is around 19.7%. And if you look at this, chart as well, where we are comparing the 2021 population and housing census and what the third quarter Statistical is also reporting. And then it means that in 2021, this was youth unemployment. Those who are simply unemployment, they are ready for work, but they are without work. Ready and available, actually. But if you look at those who are ready and available when they are without work, they are not in any form of education or training, then it means that the figure moves from 19.7 to 25%. So it means that currently, if you should sample about 100 Ghanaian youth who are between the ages of 15 and 35 years, and you want to know those who are unemployed, not in any form of education, or are currently not in any form of training, then it means that if you sample 100 people, you find 25 of these people involved in here. Now, you know that we've been talking about linking unemployment to national security. And if you look at our national security, strategy document, one of the key threats to the security of our country is youth unemployment. So to have a staggering youth unemployment rate of 19.7% is worrying and dire.
Interesting. So that's what the data really says. Let's try and get some more in terms of this particular finding. We're joined by senior lecturer at the Department of Finance, University of Ghana, Dr. Patrick Esuming, to help us make sense of what the data really say. Doc, grateful that you could join us here. Now, with what we've been told by the Statistical Service, what does it present to the nation in terms of trying to find solutions to unemployment? But first of all, your reaction to the data put out by the Statistical Service.
Good evening, and good evening to viewers, and thanks for having me. So I would like to start by, giving a lot of credit to the Ghana Statistical Service for the level of investment in generating this data. So, I tell my students for a long time that, we have not been very serious about meaning to solve the unemployment problem, because we have not really collected the information to understand the nature of the unemployment. But from the presentation today, you've seen that the Statistical Service have made substantial investment in trying to understand the root cause and the main drivers of our unemployment. And so I think when I listened to the presentation, I was extremely excited that both from a research point of view and also from a policy point of view, we are now in a position to dig in deeper to understand the nature of the unemployment problem we have, and then we'll be ready to propose solutions to it. So I think it was great. The general sense you get from all the data is that the labor market is very weak and got a little weaker over the course of the year. And it's not just from the headline unemployment rate, but you also see the percentages in vulnerable work, and then also the fraction of the youth, of the youth who are neither in school or in employment, in the labor force, or in any kind of training. So it just tells you that, well, there's a lot of work to be done, and the labor market in Ghana remains very weak.
So once we've been presented with this, how do you expect government to tackle the issue of unemployment?
So I will start by saying that, this presentation is extremely useful, and it gives us a first look at the data that we have to be able to understand the unemployment rate. I think we shouldn't be in a hurry to start proposing solutions. I know that is ultimately what we want to do. But I think one thing we have to understand is that now we have the data, we need to dig in and not start making decisions based on the first sight of, the initial things that we see, because there are a lot of underlying relationships and patterns that we need to understand. I'll give you one example. So for the first time, I've seen that we are presenting information on what you call unemployment spell, as well as unemployment duration. The unemployment spell you can think of as an episode of unemployment. So the reason why this matters is that you might have a case where the unemployment rate might have been steady around 13.5% over the course of the year. But it makes a big difference whether the same people are remaining unemployed over the course of the year, or different people are, those who are initially unemployed are getting jobs, and then different people are becoming unemployed, or the same people, they have jobs, they lose it, they have jobs, they lose it. Because either of these scenarios has different implications about the nature and the cause of unemployment and how to solve it. So for instance, if the same people, they get job and they lose it and get and lose it, it might be that maybe they are well qualified, but they might have some attitudinal problems or their work ethic is not good enough. So they keep getting jobs and getting fired. So we need to understand this. Also, if it's the same people who are remaining unemployed throughout the period, it might mean that they just don't have employable skills. And that means that the way you solve that problem is to give them some training. And we also get to understand there's a lot of research that shows that when people stay unemployed for a long time, their skills decay. So the labor market, in dynamic sector, the labor market might leave them behind. And that means that they need completely new skills and training. So I think this data gives us the opportunity. It's now time for the policymakers working together with some researchers to dig a little bit deeper so that we'll be able to come up with stronger and firmer policy responses to the unemployment problem.
Interesting. So it means that for now, we do have, how to deal with the issue of unemployment, and we expect government to take a cue from this particular finding to find out how to deal with it. But recently there was this issue of government saying that it has provided 2 million jobs. Why are we still having these differences if government says have provided this number of jobs?
So, there are several aspects to it, I think there was some discussion about the difference between having employment and having a job. It takes little to create a job. And, one of the discussions that came up is that we need to understand what are the characteristics of the job that have been created. Because if I have a task that requires 1,000 people working 100 days, and I decide to divide that work and give it to 100,000 people, each working 10 days, I would say I've created 100,000 jobs. So it may well be right that the government may have created those number of jobs. We need to know what is the nature of the job. Are those jobs casual? Are they temporary? Are they permanent? Are they vulnerable jobs as we saw today? Or are they jobs that pay social security? So it is not out of place to say that the government have created so many jobs. The other thing is that don't forget that every year, students are completing and some are joining the workforce. So it's absolutely possible to have those many number of jobs created and have the unemployment rate go up.
I'm grateful to you for joining us here. We've also been joined by Dr. Keja. He is Chief Statistician with the Ghana Statistical Service to help us really understand some of the things that were put out there. Doc, so if we say the unemployment has moved from 19 to 25%, in terms of real numbers, what are we looking at?
Good evening, and thank you for having me. So let me say that the unemployment rate, as we put out there, is 13.7% for quarter 3, and it's not 25%. So I'm not too sure which one you are referring to. If you are referring to the needs, then it's a different indicator.
So that's exactly what we're looking at.
Okay, so the needs is an acronym that is referring to the youth population that are not in employment, they are not in education, and they are not in training. So ideally, we expect an individual, a youth for that matter, to either be in education in school or engaging in some form of training or should be employed. So it should be in any of these. Okay. But then you find some of them who are not in any of the three. And that is what we are referring to as the need. And the percentage, I think, is around 25%, as you pointed out. But then in terms of numbers, it translates to about 2.5 million persons.
Wow, about 2.5 persons. And these are youth, right?
These are youth, yes. Youth, and so we are using the definition of youth in Ghana, which is a population between 15 and 35 years.
That's a lot. We also do hear about women who are unemployed. What is the real numbers here in terms of women who are unemployed?
Yeah, so we find that the total number unemployed we find to be 1.76 million, and out of that we find men to be about 1.17 million, as opposed to, females being about 1.17 million, as opposed to males, that is about 0.58 million.
Okay.
And so you're talking about, of the number that is unemployed, you find about 2/3 of them being females.
2/3 of the number being females. That's a lot. Then, do we know the reasons that are contributing to this number of females being unemployed?
Unfortunately, this is a quantitative study. It's not qualitative in nature, and so we did not go beyond the numbers to get the reasoning.
Okay.
And so it's good that this is coming up. And so we expect researchers to also support and delve into some of these issues and understand why there's so much gap in terms of the unemployment numbers we are getting at this stage.
Doc, I'm so grateful to you for joining us. Dr. Usu-Keja is the chief statistician with the Ghana Statistical Service there. We would look at the security implications of these numbers that are coming out. Dr. Ishmael Norman is a security analyst, and he joins us with for us to look at that aspect as well. Doc, you've heard the numbers put out there, the number of youth who are unemployed, the number of females who are also unemployed. What sort of danger are we looking at here?
Well, I think
all right. Okay. So you're still watching Joy News Prime here, and Kofi, these are very disturbing numbers for you to hear.
Very.
What should government do with these numbers? This sort of data that it's having.
Well, interestingly, this is the first time that I've seen unemployment data where the Statistical Service is pointing to government that we did the analysis and we realized that it starts to peak around age 21. So if you want to do any policy intervention, target those who are 21 years. When you're able to tackle the issue at that point, it solves this, more than 19% unemployment rate that we are seeing. But it's very alarming that if you select, about 3 female who are ready and available for work, about 2 of them are unemployed. A staggering figure over there. So 2 out of every 3 female you select who are available and ready to work are actually unemployed.
That's staggering. Well.